Learn English with Rose and Leo podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to Learn English with Rose and Leo. I'm Rose, and I am so excited you're here for our very first episode.
And I'm Leo. This is honestly a moment we've been planning for a while now, and it feels amazing to finally be doing this.
It really does. You know, we've both been teaching English for years, like actual years, and we've seen thousands of students go through the same struggles, the same frustrations, the same moments of, why is English so weird?
Right? And the thing is, most English learning content out there is either super boring textbook stuff, or it's made by people who learned English as a second language themselves, which is great, but it's not the same as learning from native speakers.
Exactly. And that's what makes this podcast different. We're native English speakers. We grew up speaking this language. We don't have to guess what sounds natural. We just know it because it's how we talk every single day.
And we've spent years teaching non-native speakers, so we know exactly where the confusion comes from. We've seen every mistake, every, wait, why do you say it that way moment. Every time someone's face lights up when something finally clicks.
Those aha moments are honestly the best part of teaching.
They really are. So today, in this first episode, we just want to introduce ourselves, tell you what this podcast is about, why we started it, and what you can expect from us.
And we're going to give you a little taste of the kind of stuff we'll be talking about, a quick example that shows exactly why learning from native speakers matters.
Perfect. So let's start with the basics. Who are we?
Well, I'm Rose. I've been teaching English for about 8 years now, mostly to adults and university students. I specialize in conversation skills and pronunciation, which basically means I help people sound more natural and confident when they speak.
And I'm Leo. I've been teaching for about 7 years, and I work a lot with business English and exam preparation. So I help people who need English for their careers or who are preparing for tests like IELTS or TOEFL.
But here's the thing, we didn't always plan to be English teachers. I actually studied psychology in university and thought I'd become a counselor or something.
And I studied history. I was going to be a researcher, maybe write books about obscure historical events that nobody cares about.
But then life happened and we both ended up teaching English. And honestly, best career change ever.
Agreed. Because teaching English isn't just about grammar rules and vocabulary lists. It's about helping people communicate, helping them connect with others, helping them feel confident in a language that's not their own.
And that's incredibly rewarding. Like, I've had students who were terrified to speak English, who would physically shake when they had to introduce themselves. And then, months later, they're having full conversations, making jokes, expressing themselves.
That transformation is amazing to watch, and it's why we do this.
So why did we start this podcast? Leo, you want to explain?
Sure. So, over the years, we've noticed a huge gap between what students learn in textbooks and classrooms and what native speakers actually say in real life.
Huge gap. Like, students will come to class speaking perfect, grammatically correct English, but it sounds so stiff and formal that it's almost robotic.
Exactly. They sound like they're reading from a business letter or a legal document, not having a conversation with a human being.
And the problem is, textbooks have to teach formal standard English because that's what's considered correct. But in real life, native speakers don't talk like textbooks.
Not even close. We use contractions, we use slang, we drop words, we use phrasal verbs constantly. We say and like and you know all the time.
And if you only learn from textbooks, you'll never sound natural. You'll sound correct, but not natural.
And that's frustrating for learners because they've spent years studying. They know all the grammar rules, but when they try to have a real conversation, something feels off.
They feel like there's this invisible barrier between them and real fluency.
And that's what we want to help with. We want to show you the English that native speakers actually use, not the English that textbooks think we should use.
Right. We're going to teach you the shortcuts, the informal expressions, the things that make you sound like a real person, not a robot.
And we're going to do it in a way that's actually enjoyable. No boring grammar lectures, no endless vocabulary lists that you'll forget in a week, just real conversations about real English.
Sometimes we'll talk about grammar, sure, but we'll explain it in a way that makes sense and shows you how it's actually used.
Sometimes we'll talk about culture, because language and culture are deeply connected. You can't really understand English without understanding the people who speak it.
Sometimes we'll talk about common mistakes, pronunciation problems, or just weird quirks of English that confuse everyone.
And we'll share stories from our teaching experience, funny moments, breakthrough moments, those moments where we realized, oh, that's why students find this so confusing.
Because we've been on the other side of this. We've taught students from dozens of different countries, different backgrounds, different levels. We've seen it all.
And we've learned so much from our students. They've taught us to be better teachers, how to explain things more clearly, how to understand what it's like to learn a language that doesn't follow logical rules.
Because, let's be honest, English is kind of a mess.
It really is. The spelling doesn't match the pronunciation, the grammar rules have a million exceptions. Words can mean completely different things depending on context.
Like, why is read pronounced two different ways depending on the tense? Why do we say good, better, best, but not bad, badder, baddest?
Why can you say, I'm going to the store, but not I'm going to home? Why is it at night, but in the morning?
These are questions we get all the time, and honestly, sometimes the answer is just because that's how we say it.
Which is not a satisfying answer for learners, but it's the truth. English doesn't always make sense, even to us.
But that's okay, because you don't need to understand why English is the way it is. You just need to know how to use it.
Exactly, and that's what we're here for, to show you how native speakers actually use English so you can sound natural and confident.
Okay, so let's give you a quick example of what we mean. This is something that frustrates students all the time.
Perfect example. Rose, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How about you?
Not bad, not bad. Okay, so that was a totally normal, natural conversation between two native speakers, right?
Right. Super casual, super common. You hear this exchange probably 50 times a day in English-speaking countries.
But here's the thing. If you learned from a textbook, you probably learned to answer how are you with I am fine, thank you, and you?
Which is grammatically correct. There's nothing wrong with that sentence.
But nobody actually says it. Like, if you said that to me, I would immediately know you're not a native speaker.
Not in a bad way. I'd still understand you perfectly, but it would sound formal and textbooky.
So let's break down what we actually said. I asked, how are you today? And you said, I'm good, thanks. How about you?
Notice I didn't say I am, I used the contraction I'm. Native speakers almost always use contractions in casual conversation.
And you said, I'm good, instead of I'm fine. Good is way more common than fine in everyday speech.
And I said, how about you, instead of and you? Both are correct, but how about you sounds more natural and friendly.
And I answered, not bad, which is super casual. It's like saying, I'm okay, or I'm doing all right.
You didn't say, I am not bad. You dropped the I am completely. That's called ellipsis, and native speakers do it all the time in casual conversation.
So that's a tiny example, but it shows the difference between textbook English and real English.
And this is the kind of stuff we're going to teach you. Not just the grammar rules, but how native speakers actually talk.
Because if you want to sound natural, you need to learn from native speakers, and that's what we are.
So what can you expect from this podcast? Well, every episode will focus on a specific topic, something that English learners struggle with or want to know more about.
Maybe it's a grammar point, like the present perfect continuous. Maybe it's a skill like introducing yourself or making small talk. Maybe it's something cultural, like understanding humor in English.
We'll keep it conversational, like we're just chatting with you. No boring lectures, no reading from a script, just two native speakers talking about English in a way that's actually interesting.
And we'll give you practical tips that you can use immediately, not theoretical knowledge that sits in your brain and never gets used.
Right. Everything we teach you, you should be able to apply in your next English conversation.
We'll also explain why things are the way they are when we can. Like, why do native speakers love phrasal verbs so much? Why is confidence more important than perfect grammar?
And we'll be honest with you. If something about English is weird and doesn't make sense, we'll tell you. We won't pretend there's always a logical explanation.
Because sometimes there isn't. Sometimes the answer really is just, that's how we say it.
But we'll give you the tools to recognize patterns, to understand context, to develop that gut feeling for what sounds right and what sounds wrong.
That gut feeling is what separates intermediate learners from advanced learners. It's that sense of, this sounds natural versus, this sounds weird.
And you develop that by listening to native speakers, by paying attention to how we use language, by practicing in real situations.
Which brings us to something important.
This podcast is not a replacement for practice. We can teach you, we can explain things, we can give you examples, but you still have to use English yourself.
Absolutely. Listening to us talk about English will help you understand it better, but it won't make you fluent by itself.
You have to speak, you have to write, you have to make mistakes and learn from them. That's how language learning works.
But we can guide you. We can show you what to focus on, what mistakes to avoid, what strategies actually work.
And we can motivate you, because let's be real, learning a language is hard. It takes time, it takes effort, and sometimes it's really frustrating.
Oh, it's definitely frustrating. I've learned other languages, and there were times I wanted to give up because I felt like I wasn't making progress.
Same. I studied Spanish for years, and there were definitely moments where I thought, why can't I just speak this fluently already?
But here's the thing, progress isn't always obvious. You don't wake up one day suddenly fluent. It happens gradually, in tiny increments that you don't even notice until you look back.
Exactly. And that's why consistency matters more than intensity. Studying English for 20 minutes every day is way more effective than cramming for 5 hours once a week.
Your brain needs time to process and internalize the language. It needs regular exposure, regular practice.
So our goal with this podcast is to be part of your regular English routine. Listen to us while you're commuting, while you're cooking, while you're exercising, whenever works for you.
And over time, you'll start noticing things. You'll hear phrases we use and think, oh, that's how you say that. You'll catch yourself using expressions you learned from us.
You'll start sounding more natural without even trying, because you're absorbing real English from real native speakers.
Okay, let's talk about what's coming up. In our next episode, we're going to talk about why so many learners sound like textbooks even after years of study.
And more importantly, how to fix it. We'll cover contractions, phrasal verbs, sentence structure, all the things that make you sound more like a native speaker.
After that, we're doing an episode on confidence, because honestly, lack of confidence is the #1 thing that holds learners back.
You can know all the grammar in the world, but if you're too scared to speak, it doesn't matter.
We'll also cover phrasal verbs in depth, because they're everywhere in English, and you absolutely need to understand them.
And we'll do episodes on specific skills like introducing yourself, making small talk, understanding fast English, all the practical stuff that textbooks don't teach well.
Plus some grammar topics, but explained in a way that actually makes sense and shows you how to use them in real conversations.
Basically, we're going to cover everything you need to go from correct but stiff English to natural and confident English.
And we're going to make it enjoyable, because if learning English feels like a chore, you're not going to stick with it.
Right. It should be interesting, maybe even fun. You should look forward to these episodes, not dread them.
So that's the plan. That's what this podcast is about. That's why we're doing this.
Before we wrap up, we just want to say thank you for being here. Seriously.
Yeah, we know there are a million English learning resources out there. Podcasts, YouTube channels, apps, courses. You have so many options.
And the fact that you chose to spend your time with us listening to this first episode means a lot.
We're going to do everything we can to make this worth your time, to give you real value, real insights, real help with your English.
And we want this to be a two-way street. If you have questions, if there are topics you want us to cover, if there's something you're struggling with, let us know.
We're making this podcast for you, so your input matters. We want to talk about the things you actually need help with.
Exactly. This is a journey we're taking together. You're not just passive listeners, you're part of this.
So here's what we want you to do. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any episodes.
Second, if you found this helpful or interesting, tell other English learners about us. Share this with your friends, your classmates, anyone who's trying to improve their English.
And third, practice. Take what you learn from us and actually use it. That's the only way you'll improve.
Remember, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be willing to try.
Every conversation you have in English, every mistake you make, every time you push yourself out of your comfort zone, that's progress.
And we're here to support you every step of the way.
All right, I think that's a good place to wrap up our first episode.
Agreed. Welcome to Learn English with Rose and Leo. We are so glad you're here.
Stay curious, stay confident, and keep learning with us.